about this thing ataraxia and how it can be practiced. And then I figured out that Nietzsche, for example, is very close to this opposing different statements to each other without really taking any of them seriously. I mean, his style of writing, it's very close to like real skepticism in actions. Since Sextus Empiricus is just kind of academic way, so he suggests some, he basically gives you the system which you may use for philosophizing. But Nietzsche is like a skepticism in practice, so he takes all sorts of knowledge, dogmas, and tries to refute it by using like some different perspectives.
Yeah, so today we're going to keep talking about the skeptical way and reading a little bit together. But you've also been reading Beyond Good and Evil, right, Vladimir?
Yeah, that's the book I'm working on now. Like
how's that going?
My studying stream. Yeah, I've got through the preface.
The preface.
Yeah, 2 pages. It took me 15 hours to talk about it.
Wow, that's like a really in-depth discussion or in-depth study of the.
Yeah, I memorized the whole preface. And
you memorize the whole preface.
Yeah, and each studying stream I start from reciting it and then taking next few sentences and talking about them. And also when I go for a walk, I often think about these ideas and use since I keep all this in memory, so I just may refresh it all the time. It's so fascinating.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's how you focus your attention on one thing and just keep it as long as possible, trying to figure out all subtleties.
Yeah. Well, let me share the screen. I'm going to share the screen so we can I'm going to all right, here we go.
No, I guess we stopped at 7. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this one is short, so we can start with this one because it's really short.
The origin of skepticism, but we already got through it. Attaining ataraxia. It was the chapter, the paragraph.
Yeah, just so we kind of like a TV show. The next episode.
Oh, okay. You
gotta catch up. You gotta catch up with what happened before. So we're gonna go a little bit deeper into the skeptic way. So the origins of skepticism. We say that the causal origin of the skeptic way is the hope of attaining ataraxia. Certain talented people upset by an anomaly in the facts and at a loss as to which of these facts deserve assent, endeavor to discover what is true in them and what is false, expecting that by settling this, they would achieve ataraxia. The main origin of skepticism is the practice of opposing to each statement an equal statement. It seems to us that doing this brings an end to dogmatizing. So last week we talked about the dogmatizing and all that, how other philosophies dogmatize, and the skeptic is trying to avoid this.
So I guess this skepticism, it's a main source of criticism. We may also use the word criticism, but it's kind of criticism which refutes any dogma. So criticism may be of both sorts, right? One of them is when you try to criticize, meaning that you want to dismiss something, or criticize, analyze something to understand it deeper. So in this ataraxia, you take any philosophy, any idea, anything developed by somebody else, and try to oppose an equally valid idea, maybe from different perspective. Try to find something that will be it's not the same, but it's something opposite. So let's find some examples, like in philosophy. So we may say that these famous examples like materialism versus spiritualism.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is consists of matter, and then they build sciences based on this proposition. And spiritualists say no, everything is consists of consciousness or spirit or God, and they build their own philosophies and dogmas based on this proposition.
Right.
And to understand each of them, you don't just learn what one of them says. So you go on and learn the opposite philosophy, and then you may oppose this philosophy to the first one to understand like both of them.
I see.
That's
So yeah,
at least
yeah,
how I
that's
understand it.
no, I mean that's a good explanation. That makes a lot of sense.
But also it may be like not taking anything for like not believing in anything what you like any knowledge. So whatever somebody tells you, you just try to find an opposite opinion, whatever,
Yeah.
and see how it's gonna work. The last time I remember we touched this. The Earth revolves around the sun. So and
Yeah.
it seems that it's kind of the fact which you can't disprove.
Sure.
So you can say that. But after that, I was thinking during the week, I went for a walk, and I was thinking about like how would I really prove it. So my idea was like, if I lived 500 years ago when we didn't have the internet, when we didn't have like spaceships, how would I prove that the Earth is round? And I was like, trying to think about it logically, and I couldn't come up with anything like sufficient. So I spent maybe 30 minutes trying to figure out like why do I believe that Earth is round? So I believe, since I know there's some spaceships, some pictures, and it's kind of common belief. But why exactly? Like why do I believe that this is true? So if I let's suppose like you take an idea and try to reverse it and try to say no, it's not true, it's actually just a belief. So if I don't have these tools, if I can't go to the space and see from the space that the Earth is round and that it's spinning, I can't actually prove that it's true. And that's so weird, since this is kind of obvious one, but how many beliefs and ideas you have which aren't based on facts or on any evidence, like on your experience, but are based just because you were told in your childhood or in your school that this is true, whereas it may be like it may have nothing to do with the reality, with what's really going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a tricky one, but at the same time, we have to, I guess we have to trust what we are told to some extent. We have to trust um, these people. They've studied those things, and they have done experiments and observations and all that, and they've come up with the idea that the world is round.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's like it's...
No, I'm not saying you're a flat earther. That's not. I understand that's not what your point, but I think that's that applies to a lot of things, right? There's a lot of our knowledge is not something that we can verify by ourselves. I guess that's my point, right? So, and it just acquiring knowledge kind of requires us to trust sources, right?
Yeah, but you
Because
still may do some kind of primitive thought experiments on your own.
yeah,
Like
but
you may you
for
may...
example, like when you're like listening to stuff about World War II, I believe that I have some knowledge about what happened in World War II, right? but I
Mhm.
wasn't there. I wasn't there in World War II. I wasn't even alive. So I am relying on what I've learned from history books, mostly.
Mhm.
Um, so I can't really, just from my perspective, just from my personal experience, I can't prove to you that there was, in fact, a guy named Hitler that led Germany to war, and that there was a big war, and that millions of people die. I can't. It's impossible for me to prove to anybody or myself that that's the case, just from my personal experience or my personal observations. It's just I can't do it, but I'm fairly certain that I know those things because I believe the historians that wrote about those things, and those historians, they did well. Some of them were there, like Winston Churchill, for example. He wrote a historical accounts of it, and he was there personally, like so many others. But they also, even the ones that came after, I mean, they've looked at some of the primary sources and all of that, but if you're studying history, you can't do that work for every single thing. Like, you have to
Mhm.
rely on other historians who have done that work, or in some cases like World War II, that is pretty recent. Maybe they were even there and saw it with their own eyes. So, but that applies to all knowledge. That's an example. I mean, like when we're talking about black holes and all of that, how many people actually go through the work of proving themselves that black holes exist from ground zero, and build that knowledge? I mean, it's very complicated to reach those conclusions. So you do have to rely on other people that have done the work.
Yeah, but here,
It's not,
yeah,
it's
here,
impossible to build knowledge.
yeah, you understand that what you know is like your knowledge is produced by somebody else, and you just have trust to like
Yeah.
to these people. And when you think about like World War II, so there may be different interpretations of what happened. So
Yeah.
it may be like from, let's suppose that Germany would win war. So now we will live in a different world. It wouldn't be the world which we live like now, and they will interpret everything from their own point of view, and
Right.
trying to understand like what kind of worldview you will have if you were taught from your early age that, let's say, World War II was a kind of negative event, and if you oppose a different, yeah, again, it's like mental exercise. So you try to see, you don't take it as a fact. You try to see what kind of, like, what arguments those people have, and what are the opposite arguments, and then you evaluate both of these arguments, and then you may say, okay, now, like, it's not just believing and having trust about something, but also like trying to analyze from different perspective what was going on in history. So you read history, but I've also read many, not many, but some books about World War II, and I read books written in English and books written in Russian language, and it
Mm-hmm.
seems like there's slight contradiction, not slight. Sometimes it's like huge. So basically, in Russian language, it's like all like we Russians did everything to win the war, and like
Mm-hmm.
it was like our war, and we won it. From English, yeah, you read about from some English sources, and like some of them tell that some of them give Russia a very small place. They say like Americans win the war, English like Churchill, whatever, they win the war, and they interpret it in a slightly different way. So, and I guess if I read Germans, like German will probably say it like something completely different. But to really understand what was going on, so you just take different sources and you compare them, and you also try to think on your own, like trying to
Yeah.
imagine like what was real, what was
Yeah.
unreal.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you gotta get to, like you say, like use different sources and make your own conclusions based on knowledge that you have. Yeah, but you have to start with something. You have to start with something. And I think that that's kind of like the problem with some history that is taught in like school, in
Mhm.
public system, is that history is taught from a kind of a biased perspective, especially modern history, like a Russian history, they'll tell history of World War II, from a Russian
Yeah.
perspective in a biased way. And the same thing with, the Americans, for example, or the British. But and that's true. The truth is, it was kind of like a group effort, World War II, because I've been
Mhm.
watching some documentaries about World War II, and that's honestly, I mean, you talk to people in the West a lot of the times, because they most people don't really have a thorough knowledge of history, and they don't have a thorough knowledge of World War II. A lot of people, they know World War II from Saving Private Ryan and whatever they learned in high
Mhm.
school. So from
I've
that
read,
perspective.
like in English, I've read The Rise and Fall of Third Reich
Mhm.
by, I forgot the name of the guy. It's like 1,200 pages,
Oh wow, I haven't read that.
like a huge book. And from this book, I learned that the World War II started like the whole history, how Hitler first there was Austria, and he
Mhm.
like I don't remember all these terms. First, he took over Austria. Then it was Czechoslovakia. Only
Thank
then, yeah, only then it was like Poland, and
you.
after Poland, like all this started, you know. And there was British and French,
Mhm.
and like they were oh hard to can't like I can't make up my mind right now about it.
No, I mean, what you're saying is quite accurate. I
I
mean,
just
it
learned.
was the sequence was sort of like he took, um, I believe, Austria was first,
Yeah,
and
from
then the
his
Czech Republic.
from his point of view, he wasn't an aggressor, and he tried to present. There was huge propaganda in Germany, and all Germans believe that they just protect their own.
No, but
Uh,
that's, I mean,
well,
that's just
yeah, but
propaganda, right? He did know that he was an aggressor. I mean, he was,
yeah, he
he
knew
was
he like
he was taking territory from one country after the other. It wasn't a peaceful thing.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
like
he knew he was going to.
imagine
He
wait,
knew
imagine.
he knew what he was doing. He wasn't stupid. I
Yeah,
mean, he
but
knew what
imagine
he was
that you
doing.
live in Germany that time and you don't have any access to any other source of knowledge, and you're just reading newspapers, and in newspapers they present you the situation from this like from
Yeah,
this point of view, and you basically can't you can't interpret it in a different way. And you say,
yeah.
well,
There
you
was
can you may of course you may just find different sources, but at that time people like didn't have so much.
there was a lot of propaganda, yeah, but also it's not entirely true that this is like something that has been said about German people at that time. Certainly not the German people today. I mean, this is German people today weren't even alive, the vast majority at that time. But at that time, people kind of knew what was going on. It wasn't very useful to have this notion that, okay, these German people, they knew what they were doing, because if you start with that perspective, it's very hard to move on,
Mhm.
essentially. And it was very important to move on. But the truth is, you look at World War II and you look at the times, the evidence that we have, it's very hard to say that German people didn't know what was going on. I mean, one thing is to,
No, intellectuals
interpret it in a certain way,
yeah,
Another thing is to say that they didn't know what was going on.
intellect
That's very hard to say if you
intel
actually look at the facts.
intellectuals probably knew, but imagine just average people who watch TV and their main source of information is just news. So you watch
Right.
TV and news, they tell you, like, I mean, some people who work for 10 hours a day and they don't actually think about anything, and you give them some piece of information, and most people were like that. I mean, some
Yeah.
intellectuals of course couldn't
But
understand what was
at the
going on.
same time, there was pretty obvious stuff, like the Jews were disappearing and people were getting their jobs and their things. It's not like, you know they didn't know that something was going on. And then there's lots of people that lived around the concentration camps, and they,
Mhm.
it was like what the Jews say today. I mean,
Yeah, but again, it was a theory, like this racial theory, racism. So now
yeah,
we
they
know.
had a certain ideas. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
now we see that it's like what causes it brought, but at that time it was like the same theory as like Darwinism or whatever, or any other theory, political theory like liberalism. So they didn't, like, people knew, but they was okay with that. But then all these consequences, and now we just interpret it from different point.
yeah, so there are lots of different, I guess, perspectives. And for example, history, you ideally you want to kind of like use all the perspectives. You want to use the Russian perspective and the German perspective and the American perspective and the British perspective, and you want to kind of like
Yeah, and even
create,
like
create a whole.
I would say if I, for example, studied like the history of World War II, I would certainly read like this propaganda by Goebbels and other German, propagandists to
Mhm.
understand it better. So to read
To
their
understand
arguments,
from the points of
yeah,
view, the point of view of the Germans. Yeah.
yeah, just to see how they present and how stupid or how smart it was. Since if you just try to stand on one side, you'll never know the whole truth. So you have to like see from several perspectives. But yeah, it brings us up back to Sextus Empiricus.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's just we
Yeah,
actually read.
it's the, yeah, trying to look at different perspectives.
Yeah, but for Sextus Empiricus, I would say that this ataraxia, maybe it's not about real events; it's about philosophy, right? About knowledge.
Yeah, well, this
And
this applies to all kinds of knowledge, right? I mean, history is a kind of knowledge, but you could make the same arguments about other types of knowledge, that you have different points of view, and you need to kind of like, that's what they're saying, right? That you need to combine those different types of view, and not be attached to one of them.
yeah, this practice of opposing to each statement an equal statement.
Right.
It's like I really like this expression. You don't take anything in philosophy uh, as self-evident and try to find the opposite statement, the opposite way of looking at it.
Okay. Should this number 7 here?
Yeah.
Does the skeptic dogmatize? Then we say that the skeptic does not dogmatize. We are not using the term dogma as some do in its more common meaning, something that one merely agrees to. For the skeptic does give assent to the pate that are forced upon him by a fantasia. For example, when feeling hot or cold, he would not say, I seem not to be hot or cold. But when we assert that he does not dogmatize, we use dogma in the sense which others give it of assent to one of the non evident matters investigated by the sciences. For the Pyrrhonist, assents to nothing that is non evident. Not even in putting forward the skeptic slogans about non evident things does he dogmatize. Slogans like nothing more, or I determine nothing, or any of the others of which we shall speak later. For the dogmatizer propounds as certainly the things about which he is said to be dogmatizing, but the skeptic does not put forward these slogans as holding absolutely. He considers that, just as the all things are false slogan says that together with the other things, it is itself false, as does the slogan nothing is true, so also the nothing more slogan says that it itself is no more the case than its opposite, and thus it applies to itself along with the rest. We say the same of other skeptic slogans, so that since the dogmatizer is one who posits the content of his dogmas as being true, while the skeptic presents his skeptical slogans as implicitly self-applicable, the skeptic should not be said to dogmatize thereby. But the most important point is that in putting forward these slogans, he is saying what seems to him to be the case and is reporting his pathos without belief, not firmly maintaining anything concerning what exists externally.
Yeah, I guess we may talk about it for a while now.
Sure, sure. What are your thoughts?
Can you bring it back, like the 7? Yeah, at the beginning. So Okay. Then we say that the skeptic does not dogmatize. We're not using the term dogmas. Yeah, like the something that one merely agrees to. So dogma, like he gives a definition of dogma of his time.
Right.
Something that one merely agrees to. So basically, a skeptic is somebody who disagrees about everything, or says like that may be true or false. Feeling hot, he would not
Yeah.
say, "I'm seem not to."
It seems that he's saying that they don't make statements that are, I guess, the absolute truth, right? They just make statements, but they don't absolutely commit to it.
Uh-huh. And
The
these slogans like nothing is true. So what he wants to say is probably like any sort of knowledge. Again, it's even when you say nothing is true, it's also a kind of dogma, since you present it as a positive statement. And he says no, it's like even this slogan is just, he just reports what he knows, or what he sees, what he believes is true at this moment. It's kind of hard one, but yeah, I actually like just trying to understand. Like maybe we might take some examples again from real life and try to understand how this skeptic.
Well, to me, I mean, though he uses kind of like a little bit of a difficult way. It's not entirely clear, but it seems that he's saying that they do not commit to these positions necessarily. That's what I can understand.
Yeah, he tried to defend himself from objections. Like if you say that you're a skeptic, you basically say something about like skepticism means something, and if you're a skeptic, you probably believe in something that skeptics believe. But he wants to say no, we don't believe in anything, and even just if I'm a skeptic, it's still just what I what I don't what confirm completely.
Yeah, here for example, here it says, but the skeptic does not put forward these slogans as holding absolutely. So, he
So
does.
what appears to be true at this moment, like, so if
Yeah,
you're
perhaps, yeah, just not something absolute. They're not saying absolute truths.
mhm.
Very not very non-committal philosophy. Yeah, this might be true, might not be true. From
It's kind of this school of sophists. Before Socrates, there was this school, and Socrates argued with them in Plato's dialogues quite often, like sophists.
the sophists, yeah.
So who could take something black and say it's white and prove you that
Right.
you, yeah. And but this is, I guess this is a kind of similar school. So maybe
The skeptics, you mean?
yeah.
Well,
Those
but it's different because
so
they're
yeah
trying
so
to not commit to anything, right? And just analyze things, but without making commitments, it seems so far.
yeah, sophists were kind of professional philosophers who took money from their philosophy. So they basically used philosophy as a way to earn money.
Mm-hmm.
But for a skeptic, it's more about knowledge. It's not like earning money. It's basically trying to take all dogmas and consider them from skeptical point of view, trying to disprove all dogmas, or trying to uh, you know find something that may oppose to every dogma without creating a new dogma.
Right, or at
Kind
least
of,
even if they don't disprove it, perhaps at least question the dogmas.
yeah, question creating some kind of intellectual freedom. Since
Mm-hmm.
if you propose a dogma, you must stay to it. So you you can't just say I believe in this and then you say no, and I don't believe in this. I believe in something else. So you bind yourself to certain, like you said last time, you marry a certain dogma, and then there's no way to to go and have fun with other dogmas. But for a skeptic, you don't stick to any dogma. You go from one to another. Just understand them, read some books, refute them.
Yeah. Let me just read this number 8 here. See
Yeah,
if it gives us a little bit more.
let's go ahead.
Does the skeptic have a system? We proceed in the same way when asked whether the skeptic has a system. If one defines a system as an attachment to a number of dogmas that agree with one another and with appearances, and defines a dogma as an assent to something non-evident, we shall say that the skeptic does not have a system. But if one says that a system is a way of life that, in accordance with appearances, follows a certain rationale, where that rationale shows how it is possible to seem to live rightly being taken not as referring only to virtue, but in a more ordinary sense, intends to produce the disposition to suspend judgment, then we say that he does have a system. For we do follow a certain rationale that, in accord with appearances, points us towards a life in conformity with the customs of our country and its laws and institutions, and with our own particular pathe.
So two ways of looking at the system, right? If one defines a system as an attachment to a number of dogmas that agree with one another and with appearances, and defines dogma as an assent to something unevident, we shall say that the skeptic does not have a system. But if it's a way of life that, in accordance with appearances, follows a certain rationale, where that rationale shows how it is possible to seem to live rightly, and tends to produce the disposition to suspend judgment, then we say that he does have a system. So it's kind of controversial, right?
Yeah, he says two different things, right? That they don't have a system and that they do have a system, but that depends on how you define system. And he says that they do have a system if you define system as something that tends, like what we've been saying, tends to produce the disposition and judgment, right? Then we say he does have a system. So essentially the system is a certain way of looking at things that you have a disposition to suspend judgment, to not judge right away.
Mm-hmm. But also he says, like, in the end, about conformity with the customs of his country and its laws and institutions.
Right.
So it's basically like I'm not going to judge anything. So I just follow the customs of my, country, people who are basically authority. So he just he suggests that whenever the authority is going to say just let it be so, and I'm not going to say something against or for this. But it wasn't the case with philosophy. Yeah, it's like it's not authority in terms of how we understand it. Like when there's government and government says this is true, and you don't, and you follow it mindlessly. It's rather more about, again, philosophical issues and like certain knowledge and science, probably.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, he might want to. We can't really say what he means just by looking at this, I don't think. But it seems that he's trying to point out that they are not just radicals. They do follow the laws and institutions of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he'll come back to this. I imagine he will later on.
But still hard to like draw a clear distinction between these two systems. So in one way, it's like no any particular system, and then the other way, or if it's if it's actually helps me to live a better life, and the better life is about having no judgment. This is a system, right? To suspend
Yeah,
judgment.
I get, but I guess, yeah, he does, he is consistent what he said before, which is, they don't have an attachment to dogmas, uh, but they do have a disposition to suspend judgment.
Hmm.
So those things are not necessarily contradictory, they just follow what he was saying before. It's just that,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they have to rely on certain, like, on reason or on any like on some kind of knowledge to live their lives. Since if you don't believe in anything, and if you think that everything is just absurd and nothingness, there's no way for you to do anything. Since your actions, if you ask the question, why am I doing that, there's always some why. And this why, there may be several whys, right? Maybe, like, I don't know how many more, like, as many motives as you want to find, but still they determine your behavior, they determine what you do. And if you don't have anything, if you reject all this, like, reasons for your actions, you can't do anything at all. That's why he probably says there's certainly some knowledge is still rational and useful and whatever.
Yeah, we can, let's see what
Go
he
on.
says
Yeah,
about
yeah,
nature.
yeah.
Does the skeptic theorize about nature? We reply in the same vein if asked whether the skeptic needs to theorize about nature. On the one hand, if there is a question of making an assertion with firm confidence about any of the matters dogmatically treated in physical theory, we do not theorize. But on the other hand, in the course of opposing to every statement an equal statement, and in connection with ataraxia, we do touch upon physical theory. This too is the way we approach the logical and ethical parts of the so-called philosophy. Mm. Um, well, I mean, he's following in the same line, right? Because he's saying
Mhm.
that we're not attached to the dogmas that have been created, but at the same time, we talk about these matters, but we talk
Yeah.
about them in a different way.
So it's like they don't propose anything, but if somebody else proposes a certain theory, like physical theory, they may just, oppose to this theory and find a different one and try to talk about it, trying to overthrow one theory by means of another theory.
Or even if it's not overthrowing, they like to it seems that the whole idea is to oppose one statement with another statement at all
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, and find this statement, which is going to be equally valid as the previous one.
We do not theorize, but on the other hand, in the course of opposing to every statement an equal statement, we do touch upon so yeah, he's pretty obsessed with this idea of opposing every statement with an equal statement.
Yeah, I guess it's a kind of critical thinking. So you don't take again, you don't take anything as self-evident, and you try to oppose it, like try to refute it. It's actually a kind of scientific way of thinking. So you take your
Mhm.
theory, and you don't just try to prove it, but you try to find some evidence which may disprove your theory. And if you fail, probably your theory makes sense and it's true.
Yeah. Do you want to do this one, number 10?
Yeah, let's go on.
Okay. Do the
I guess
skeptic.
I guess we might take this one as the last one and then just talk for
Sure.
a while and finish.
Sounds good. Do the skeptics deny appearances? Those who claim that the skeptics deny appearances seem to me not to have heard what we say. For, as we stated above, we do not reject the things that lead us involuntarily to assent in accord with the passively received fantasia, and these are appearances. And when we question whether the external object is such as it appears, we grant that it does appear, and we are not raising a question about the appearance, but rather about what is said about the appearance. This is different from raising a question about the appearance itself. For example, the honey appears to us to be sweet. This we grant, for we sense the sweetness. But whether it is sweet, we question insofar as this has to do with the philosophical theory, for that theory is not the appearance, but something said about the appearance. And even when we do present arguments in opposition to the appearances, we do not put these forward with the intention of denying the appearances, but by way of pointing out the precipitancy of the dogmatists. For if the theory is so deceptive as to all but snatch away the appearances from under our very eyes, should we not distrust it in regard to the non-evident, and thus avoid being led by it into precipitate judgments?
Yeah, I think we need to clarify the word appearance here.
Yeah.
The difference between phenomenon and nomenon.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that appearance here is what appears to be true, or something that is fairly evident. He gives us the example of something that is sweet. Everybody knows what sweet is, and we can sense it when we eat it. So that he's saying, well, we're not going to say that something is not sweet when it obviously is. So I guess we don't have the context perhaps, but at that time they probably received the criticism, I imagine, that they're always denying the obvious, right? So it feels to me that this is a response to that.
Well, I think,
he's saying that they don't deny the obvious. What they do is they deny perhaps what people construct around the obvious.
And how they express it, since appearance, I guess, is more about the real world, like the world outside of our, outside of ourselves, and what he calls noumenal. It's like, again, it's the language and nature. So appearance is just nature, and knowledge and whatever he tries to describe, it's language, and there's a difference between language and nature. So since our language is incompatible with nature and it can't actually describe it fully, so when he talks about appearance, I guess he wants to say that whatever is here in appearance, we don't deny that nature exists, but we simply say that the way how we speak about nature is not convenient. So we may always find some opposite way. Like if we say that honey is sweet, we don't argue about its taste. We argue about just the way how we describe its taste, and is it taste absolute for everybody, and is our language sufficient for describing it? No, I guess I got lost, but. Yeah, when I read Kant, in Kant, this the critical distinction between phenomena and noumena, and the phenomena, it's Kant goes deeper. He says that phenomena, it's everything that we perceive by our brains, and noumena, it's like the thing in itself, which we have no access to, because whatever we have access to is just our brains, and our brains interprets reality by using language, and we interpret not the reality, we interpret only these appearances, what we perceive, but it's not the real world, since the real world is inaccessible for our senses and our interpretations.
Yeah, I think he's doing something similar here. It's not entirely the language that he uses is a little bit convoluted, but it seems that he's talking about similar thing, right?
Yeah, before it's like in chapter 3, he was talking about a disposition to oppose phenomena and noumena to one another in any way, whatever. And there was like in any way, whatever meant phenomena to phenomena, phenomena to noumena, and noumena to noumena. So see, there's like he talks about two different like what? Like the world and language again. Like phenomena to phenomena is like something in this world, like like let's say water and fire. It's like two phenomenon.
Yeah.
And the word water and the word and water itself is like a position between like noumena and phenomena. And noumena is just two names, like the word love and the word hate.
Right.
There's differences between language and how we describe things with what we really describe.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like what he's talking about here.
Yeah, I guess when we like next time when we get through this paragraph once again and just try to read it once more carefully
Sure, we'll do the recap.
to understand it. Yeah.
The recap at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, it's hard language, so but yeah, I guess we shouldn't give up so early. I guess later.
Well, it's not that hard. I mean, it's hard language and hard ideas, but he does. I mean, it's not incomprehensible. I think the central point is that he's saying, well, it's not that we're trying to disprove the obvious. We just want to make sure we don't have a dogma. We're open to interpretation. Things are open to interpretation. So we're not fixated in one way of thinking. I mean, the way I interpret what he said so far, this is kind of like the central idea.
It's kind of to think about again, like critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have critical thinking. I guess before they used this different, like skepticism was kind of critical thinking for uh, for thousands of years before they invented this term.
Right. And he doesn't like dogma, right? So, but I mean, personally, I think usually the best thing is to be kind of like in between the skepticism and the dogmatic, right? Because you can't be always on the fence about everything, but at the same time, you shouldn't overly commit to ideas, because then you get biased, you get too biased. So I think, being sort of in between the skeptic and the dogmatist in a way is the best position.
Yeah, it's like you may have a certain, like I like writing and I have a kind of dogma that I must write every time. Like I must describe reality, whatever is going on. The main point of like what I'm doing, I'm just trying to describe what's going on and use language and improve my language. And it's kind of dogma, since I don't question it. So I question it. Yeah, I tried to question it many times, but it always led, like as soon as I quit writing, I get I just get lost. So I just start playing video games. I start doing some things which I don't like, and I can't control my behavior. I can't control really my life. It's like my self-discipline ruins immediately. But as soon as I maintain writing, as long as I maintain writing, so all things are going so well. And for me, it's kind of dogma, but at the same time, I'm trying to like not be completely like bounded by it. So sometimes I might just give up for for a week or for a couple of weeks, and just to see it. Just example from my life.
No, yeah, I mean that's a good example. Yeah, I think, but I think that's natural. I think we all need our dogmas. I think the dogma is important, but I think to have a version of ourselves that is the skeptic as well is important. So I really do believe that a compromise between the two is the best thing, because I don't think that being skeptical all the time, a skeptic all the time, is particularly helpful, because you're never really gonna get anywhere, really. We
Yeah, it
do
might be
we need
from
we do need some structure in order to get places, like you're saying with the writing. you know if you're always doubting everything, I do believe that that's not very helpful. But at the same time, if you have dogmas and you never move, then you're just an idiot at the end of the day. So, because you're never going to evolve. So,
well, you may improve your dogma, right? You may.
Yeah, I mean, you can improve your dogma, but you're always gonna have the same structures all the time. And it's like for 1,000 years, philosophy was about improving our it was about making our belief in Christianity a little bit more sophisticated for 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
How many philosophers are still read from that period, 500 to 1500, two or three.
Yeah, there are some, like,
there are some, but it's two or three.
On some contemporary.
Why? Because it really wasn't that interesting, like it was pretty dogmatic stuff. It simply isn't really that interesting.
I guess what's hard is to find this balance between dogma and skepticism. It's like finding the balance between optimism and pessimism. So if you're on one side, if you're like optimistic about everything, it's like you become naive and gullible. If you are pessimistic, basically you're in depression, and it's very hard to live. But to find the balance between this, like to find the right middle ground, it's so hard, since you can't stay there. You always get to one point or to another. And the same with skepticism. So you found like some brilliant idea or whatever, like some principles which you may think that these principles are true, I have to follow them, and you follow them, and for like a couple of years your life is just developing and you feel so good. But then you find something the opposite, and you start developing this suspicion, and then you may even find something that contradicts to all your beliefs, and you may regret about like what you were doing for these couple of years. You may develop a kind of new perspective, like higher perspective, and you may say, oh, it's like all these were nonsense, and I'm not going to believe in anything. Now I'm going to become skeptic about everything, and this is the best way. And then you go back to dogmatism, since you start developing this, I'm not going to believe in anything. It's become a new dogma. You go on about this dogma, and then it's so hard. But still, it's, I think like reading philosophy, when you have skepticism as a tool, you don't attach to any particular philosophy, and it's very helpful in studying philosophy, in understanding what's going on in philosophy.
I agree. Yeah, especially when you're covering knowledge and trying to understand new knowledge. I think that's a good perspective to have, because you're still trying to figure things out. And I think, yeah, that's certainly a good perspective to have.
All right, so I guess like we're going to finish here.
Yeah, sure. We can finish here and take it up again next week. We have some discussion about artificial intelligence on Friday, and what are you covering this week with your group?
It's still the same.
Still the same. Still
consciousness.
It's still consciousness. Yeah.
Last week we had a great discussion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really doing a lot of consciousness thinking.
We discussed also artificial, like these technologies, and
well, artificial intelligence is very connected.
Yeah, it's the same. It's like artificial consciousness and artificial intelligence. It's it looks like the same thing. Yeah. So they try to create artificial consciousness.
All right.
It's going to be self-aware, have its own will. I would try to think about the future, imagining that there's going to be some kind of artificial consciousness, and you may just share it with other individuals. Like now, for example, we share the internet, and we share kind of like not consciousness, but we share certain thing which but we use language and it's hard. We don't share actual experience. But imagine that we may just take some device, kind of brain machine interface, and share our real experience.
Yeah.
And you may share your experience with, I don't know, Elon Musk, whoever, some philosophers simultaneously. And it's not going to be you, since the idea is that you'll probably not feel as if you are Elon Musk, but this thing which will unite like 5, 10, 15, 20 brains, it will have a kind of richer, like artificial consciousness. Basically, it's going to be, you imagine that you have some 5 fingers, and like this thing is going to have like 5 persons as you have 5 fingers.
Right. Yeah, it'll be an interesting discussion, and yeah, it's all related to consciousness at the end of the day. But now we have people's consciousness and computer consciousness, I guess, or not, depending on, I guess, on what your conclusions are on the topic. But
from a pantheist, panpsychist, pantheist, from a panpsychist point of view, you may even say that the internet is a conscious organism. Like it itself is an artificial consciousness already, and we just parts of it, and we think that we are conscious, we're building the internet, we're building like all these technologies. But if you take panpsychism seriously, you must say, no, it's like, this is like the internet itself, it's already consciousness, and it's already self-aware, and it uses us to develop itself, all these like atomic vehicles.
right.
Like, now it uses us like, yeah, it's basically like Terminator, this Skynet.
Like Skynet.
Yeah, just growing and using us. Oh, it's fine. I mean,
all right, listen, Vladimir, it was good talking to you. Next week we can talk a little bit more about skepticism, and
sure.
maybe if you end up waking up on Friday in the middle of the night,
we
can talk about artificial intelligence as well.
I'll try not to miss, since artificial intelligence is a very fascinating topic. I was thinking about it for many years. I guess the first time it was when I started seriously thinking about it was already like 10 years ago, and since that I was watching videos, reading some. Yeah, I didn't read a lot, but I watched lots of lectures and videos related to the topic.
Yeah, if you want, you can share some of those videos with the group. You can share on the group, and
okay.
Yeah, that way we'll have something to start from when we do the discussion on Friday.
Yeah, there's crash course about artificial intelligence.
Well, I've been watching a lot of crash course.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. Now I'm doing American government and politics.
Mm-hmm.
I have a test coming up on Saturday about for jobs that's useful for me. So yeah, I'm doing American government and politics. I'm going to try to finish that this week, and I want to do the economics one as well. I'm hoping to finish both of those by the end of the week.
Mm-hmm. I'll post, like recently I watched John Searle Google talk about consciousness, and I'll probably post here, since he talks about like artificial consciousness as well, and he basically takes this realist, like he says that all this artificial consciousness, that people just don't know what they're talking about. Like we'll never be able to make a computer like having consciousness. It's just kind of nonsense. But yeah, it's better to watch. I mean, I'll post the video.
Okay, I'm looking forward to watching it. Yeah, the beauty of the internet.
Yeah, share everything.
But yeah, I really like Crash Course. I think it's my favorite YouTube channel now. It's my favorite YouTube channel. I think I'm gonna watch all the courses eventually.
Well, this was when I started studying English,
Yeah.
I remember I found Crash Course 2013, 8 years ago, and I couldn't
Yeah,
understand anything.
that must have been like the very beginning, because yeah,
Yeah,
that was
it already was quite popular, and I
really
couldn't.
2013.
Yeah, there were translations, like Russian
Wow,
translations of Crash Course already, and I couldn't understand anything. I wanted to watch a lot, and there was very few translations in Russian language. There was just
they speak so fast as
Yeah,
well.
there was only Crash Course Psychology. I remember I watched it in translation. I was, wow, that's so amazing. I really like it. And I started studying English, and I even translated a few episodes from biology and chemistry on my own, like
Really?
From Crash Course
Wow.
2013. And then I was thinking, when I learn English, I'll watch all these Crash Course, all these episodes, like all. And yeah, it was kind of wishful thinking. So when I
Wishful thinking.
yeah, I watched maybe 7 or 10 courses, but eventually I lost my interest since
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know if
I
I'm gonna
like
watch all of them, to be honest with you. Probably not, but
yeah
I'll watch the ones that interest me and are useful to me. I think the American government and politics, that's very useful
yeah they have
to
very
me.
amazing course on history, on both on European history and
I've already
world history too.
I've already watched the two that I've watched were the world history and American history.
Mhm. American history is more about these presidents. I also watched American history as well. It's like this president, that president. It's still it's very fine how they define history. Just it's basically politics. It's not actual history.
I mean, but
Mm.
that's kind of the true the case with a lot of history, because politics, it's so influential in history
No,
that
for me, history is like history of thoughts and thinkers and ideas.
that's Vladimir's history, which
History of philosophy, maybe.
the history of philosophy. Yeah. Um, I mean, I would like to, but I feel like inspired by Crash Course. I would like to build something in the Philosophy Club
Yeah,
channel.
I would recommend you to watch philosophy, like Crash Course Philosophy. It's one of my favorite, and
Well, yeah, I'll watch
there.
that one eventually. Yeah, I think I'll watch the economics one first, but just because it's a little bit more useful to me.
Yeah, I wish
Right,
Crash Course
right, right,
Philosophy.
right now. But then
Uh-huh.
after that, the philosophy. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly gonna watch the philosophy one. I don't know when,
Yeah.
but pretty soon. Yeah, I'm
All
excited
right,
to watch
so
that one.
let's tell our people to subscribe to the channel.
All right, subscribe to the channel,
Yeah,
guys. We'll keep growing the channel, keep doing stuff.
yeah.
Hopefully, one day it will be sort of like Crash Course. All right, no, not the same thing, but equally cool.
Better.
Equally cool,
No,
or
no,
even
better.
better.
Let's
Better,
do
even
something better.
better. Wow, that's a tall
Oh, why
order.
not? Why not? We need to aim high to,
Aim for the moon. Yeah. Aim for the stars, and you might reach the moon. That's what they
yeah.
say.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to say. Like aim higher to get to the right place.
All right.
you,
Well,
if you aim low, you will not get anywhere.
true. You're probably gonna, yeah,
No,
crash
not
on the
gonna even
ground pretty soon. Yeah.
no, not even going to start.
All right. Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you for the discussion. It was fun, and
Yeah.
we'll continue
Thank you.
talking about